Donald Trump and the administration, speaking of authoritarianism, tried to seize control of state elections through executive orders. 23 states sued Trump, and a federal appeals court has thankfully told him no. This is a devastating defeat for Donald Trump. He's not really talking about it. It's not really getting the media attention that it deserves, but it proves something extraordinarily important. Trump is dangerous, but he isn't all powerful. He can't invent presidential powers because frightened people imagine that he has those powers. Trump's executive order from March, this is why it's important to follow up on this stuff, attempted to create a federal list of Americans supposedly eligible to vote. The Postal Service would deliver mail ballots only to voters on the approved state lists that were coordinated with the federal system. That's what Trump wanted. That's what the executive order said. And his administration could create an incomplete list, and they could prevent legal voters from receiving ballots. They could threaten election officials with prosecution if they said, we're not going to follow that. And the absurd hypocrisy is that Donald Trump cast a mail-in ballot himself in Florida this year while saying mail-in voting is cheating and that mail-in ballots are inherently, that's his word, inherently corrupt. Mail-in voting is acceptable when Trump wants convenience, but when millions of other Americans want to use it, it threatens democracy. Now, the Constitution simply doesn't allow the president to control elections. This is why it's so important to understand what Trump declaring an emergency would or wouldn't be able to do. As we spoke with Mark Elias last week or the week before, you can declare an emergency, but states still run their elections. States decide, are things suitable, are conditions suitable to have this election? District Judge Indira Talwani blocked Trump's order in June. Trump's Justice Department then asked the First Circuit to let it proceed during appeal. The court has rejected that request 2-1. The order remains blocked in the 23 states and DC that sued. Now, the administration came in and said the lawsuit was premature because agencies hadn't even finished implementing the demands. If you want to sue over this, first implement what Trump wants, then go to a court and argue that there's a problem. Fortunately, the court recognized that doesn't work. The midterms are very close. States can't wait for chaos before suing to defend their elections. I read a comment on Reddit, which was interesting, which is taxpayers are funding Trump's unlawful scheme, and then they're funding the legal effort required to stop Trump's unlawful scheme. As usual, the taxpayers are the ones who get screwed. Now, this is a fight that's not over, because even though it's great that we have this injunction, the injunction only applies to the 23 states that sued. The underlying appeal still has to continue. Trump may go all the way to the Supreme Court and ask them to intervene. And meanwhile, you might say, well, but is this the Save America Act? No. Trump has this executive order from March, which was stopped in June, and now we have an injunction. And separately, he has the Save America Act, which he's upset that Senate Republicans simply don't have the votes to pass. He's doing both of these things. But look at the trajectory. Trump issues an unconstitutional order. States say, we're not going to do that, and they sue. A federal judge blocks Trump, and an appeals court preserves the block. This is a form of resistance that is working. And I know it's become so cliche and staid to use that term, resistance. I understand why people are scared. I see what's going on and I get it. Fatalism, the idea of we can't do anything about it. We just can't. That helps Trump by convincing people voting is pointless because Trump will simply declare himself the dictator. And that is false. Spreading that idea can depress turnout. This is a victory. Can Trump create chaos? Of course he can. Can Trump try to intimidate officials and prepare excuses for losing? Yes, he can. But he can't snap his fingers and magically control the elections of all 50 states and courts within those states and ballot boxes within those states. Here is a very good example. Trump tried to seize power he didn't have. States have fought back. Trump has lost. The states aren't going to do it, these 23. Now we need to let the underlying appeal continue to see if we can get a ruling that applies to all states. A lot of people haven't even heard that this is going on. Why? Because as I've talked about a lot and write about in my forthcoming book, Pay Attention, the algorithmic content distribution we all are subjected to on digital platforms doesn't show everybody the same stuff, and it creates totally parallel but non-intersecting media environments in which we all exist. This is a victory. We recognize it. We say, hey, this is a sign that we don't just lay down and give up. And now we continue fighting as we rapidly approach the midterms. Thanks for watching. Check out this other video. And if you like our content, make sure to subscribe so YouTube puts our videos in your feed, and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple.